there's always the risk of missing the opportunity to shoot something great.
So I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. Installing on the air for 25 minutes was not a fun task.
So that was a challenge that I had to learn on top of trying to not get hypothermia and die, which is a little bit of an exaggeration. But I couldn't feel any of my fingers or toes during halftime and then for the rest of the game.
Ready one, take one. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Broadcast Podcast, a brand new show where we'll dive deep in the world of broadcasting, more specifically, sports broadcast production. We wanted the first episode to be a short introduction to what we'll be doing with this podcast and to serve as an introduction to ourselves as well. Without further ado, let's just introduce ourselves. Let's start off with Josh Messenger.
Hey everyone, I'm Joshua Messenger. I full-time work in the advertising industry, but I've been in part-time broadcast work for about 3.5 years now, since the fall of August in 2021. And in that time span, I've worked 310 total games and counting. That's good for over 1,200 hours of live broadcast experience in a variety of roles. I've produced, I've directed, I've done a lot of replay and graphics work. I've done plenty of camera. I've even called half a dozen games in various play-by-play and color commentary roles, primarily with Bradley University sports, that's how I started way back in the day. I still work in a lot of high school arenas nowadays, and I've done some other freelance college stuff here and there. Peoria Rivermen, all types of Central Illinois stuff is typically where I've been, as well as a couple one-offs here and there. I also serve on the volunteer broadcast production team at the church that I go to, and I do camera there, both mobile and tripod, as well as direct. So I've been in quite a few different positions over the years, and although I don't work full-time in the industry, I'm still very passionate about it and love getting to do it more and more.
A man of many talents. Tell me, Josh, real quick, before we move on to Caden, what's the biggest difference between a sports broadcast and a church show?
Yeah, so in sports, you never know what's going to happen. You know roughly that the pitcher is going to throw the pitch, and then after that, who knows? So you just have to dance on your feet after that. The deal with working on the church side of things is that it's all planned out beforehand. You're going to do these songs, and then there's going to be the offertory, and then the pastor's going to come up and give, the sermon. So in that aspect, it's scripted pretty much from the get-go. So you know what's coming next, and you can ready and prepare your shots accurately and a little bit better than you can when it's all touch and go in the sports world. So that's the biggest difference, as well as just the arena is smaller. It's just whatever's up front near the pulpit.
Well, Josh, we'll definitely have to touch back on that later, but let's learn a little bit more about Caden Sexton. Caden, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Rodrigo. I'll give a little bit of introduction about myself. I'm a junior sports communication major here at Bradley University. Same alum as those two, but they are both already graduated. I'm still a student, getting my way towards my degree. I work primarily with the Bradley Athletic Department, as I am now taken over as the president of Braves Vision, which is a club both of those guys worked in. It's where we broadcast all the ESPN Plus games for the Bradley Athletic events. So all of our Division One baseball, basketball, volleyball, soccer is all live on there. And I work as a broadcaster, as well as since my role as president, scheduling and working with our production company. And so I get the kind of viewpoint of how does a show get planned. You know, these guys, I think, have more broadcast experience than me. They've been doing it longer, but I'm doing it every day, and I'm doing the planning, and I'm trying to make sure we're executing the shows at a proper level. Along with all the Bradley events I do, I work with Josh over at Clutch Sports Media, do all that high school stuff whenever I'm free. And yeah, I mean, I just a Peoria Riverman as well. Just trying to get as many opportunities as I can as a 20-year-old college student in the broadcast realm, because that is, after all, my passion, Rodrigo.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, anybody who knows Caden in person knows how hard you grind and how much hours you're putting into this field. But I think the most interesting thing about you is that not only do you have the experience in the broadcast realm, but also in the sports information realm, working with Bradley on their communication side, social side, that sort of thing. Can you talk to us a little bit about maybe how those two go hand in hand, how they work together?
Yeah, I have been writing game notes and I've been doing the previews, the recaps, as well as working on social media. And it gets you kind of in the mindset of the coaches and what they kind of are thinking about. And so it allows me as a broadcaster, because again, I love doing the camera, I love the replay and the graphics and the producing and the directing. I've tried it all, but the commentary still holds as my favorite spot. And so working as the kind of SID role and getting to be with the teams and learn more information about them, it's kind of allowed me to be a better broadcaster because I know the information. I'm just feeling what they are looking for and what they kind of the behind the scenes that is shareable, I guess is the best way to put that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's one of the things that I think benefits you the most is that you're around these athletes, so you're able to know a little bit more about them as a person, but also, you're keeping up with the stats and everything, which I'm sure really comes in handy when you're broadcasting. But I guess I'll move on to a little bit of an introduction to myself. My name is Rodrigo Perez. I've worked in broadcasting for a while now, various roles. Started off as a camera operator. I've been a utility. I've done a little directing with Clutch Sports Media as well. That's where I kind of got my broadcasting start. That's where I even did my first play-by-play color stuff as well. So I've done a lot of stuff with a bunch of teams in the Chicagoland area. That's where I'm from. Born and raised Chicagoland area. So I've worked Schaumburg Boomers, Joliet Slammers, Chicago Seals, Chicago Wolves, every team around the area that you can imagine. Not at least the minor league teams for now. Yeah, I love broadcasting. I love storytelling. Writing was also a big part of my focus back when I was at Bradley, back when I was in school. And the storytelling aspect of both broadcasting and the writing portion is what really drove me to pursue a career in sports and just continue following it, but also continue telling the stories of these various athletes at both the college level, high school level, to hopefully more in the future at the professional level. But enough about me. First question I want to ask you guys, we'll start off with Mr. Messenger. The first broadcast you were a part of, what was it and what were you in charge of? What were you doing during that first broadcast?
Well, I'll tell you what, I wasn't in charge of anything because that would have been dangerous for the first broadcast ever. But that would have been August of 2021. That would have been Bradley University soccer. I was camera one, the least dangerous camera that there is, because all you have to do is follow the ball from one side of the field to the other. And I remember being insanely stressed out because I was on a live broadcast for the first time. I was responsible for what people were seeing through, from their living rooms to the actual field in Peoria. So that was the first game that I worked. And from then on, I was kind of hooked. Right after that, I went to our control room for all the Bradley games. And from there, I was sold.
Well, Josh, one of the things that you mentioned was doing a soccer broadcast first. Were you shadowing or were you straight into the fire?
Well, back in my day, there was no shadowing. So we were just dumped straight onto camera one, which is the easiest camera, but the most important camera nonetheless. So it was just a quick couple tips before we got going. And then right off of first kick, I was live.
So I'm a huge soccer fan,
You are?
Josh, but you are not the biggest soccer fan. That being your first broadcast, did you still feel inclined to continue on this whole broadcast journey?
I did, and it's soccer's an interesting sport. I wouldn't call it my favorite like you would, but I still think the soccer's pretty interesting. So for me, it was yes, the sports school, and then I also value the challenge of it because I learned pretty quickly that it was more than just moving left and then right and then left again and then right again, because it was about telling the story a little bit more. So eventually, the deeper you get, the more that you add subtle zooms to your camera work. And then the more that you add, you decide which players to keep in your frame and which ones are okay to kind of leave out because they're not important to the ball's trajectory and to the team's current push to the goal. So it becomes a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more developed the longer in it that you stay. And I didn't know all of that day one, but I could sense that it was there day one. And so that's what kept me around.
Well said. It really is about the intricacies, and I'm glad you mentioned the storytelling aspect because, people watching on TV, they don't get the experience of actually being there. But us as camera operators, as directors, producers, you want to try to do the best you can to make it feel as if the viewer is actually there. But yeah, lots of great thoughts from you. Caden, your first broadcast you were a part of, and what were you doing?
Well, I can't remember if you were there or not, Rodrigo. I know for a fact Josh was. It was Bradley baseball in March of 2023. I was camera 3, which is in the visiting dugout. It was the Southern Illinois Salukis that I was getting to spend my time with. Bradley actually got run ruled in inning number 7, but I was in the dugout of the winning team, and those guys were a lot of fun. And I just enjoy baseball so much. It's my favorite sport. And so, despite my school losing the game, I still enjoyed just tracking those guys running to first base. And I wanted to come back, even though there was no game the next day because it was a Monday. I just wanted to go back to the park the next day and do it again.
I will say I was there that day, and I believe I was the person who got to show you the camera and how kind of the basic aspects of it worked. To this day, I don't think I've seen anyone who is more enthusiastic about getting the opportunity to try it than you were. So that just speaks to the passion.
I know, Caden, you had a little broadcast experience back in high school, but I'm sure you never really worked with a ESPN Plus type camera before.
No, and all my experience in high school was more focused on just commentating to a radio audience. It was never listening somebody being able to see what I was talking about. So never any opportunities to even talk about what they were seeing. Just I had to explain it all in radio terms. So a broadcast with a camera in itself was new to me, Rodrigo.
I guess I'll go ahead and just tell you guys my first broadcast. I actually do remember it. I remembered my first broadcast, so I was like, you know what? Why don't we hear everybody's first broadcast? But mine first was a Bradley volleyball game, actually. For this one, I shadowed, I think, the first set, or maybe it was the first 2 sets, one of those two. But I know I did the third set, and it was cam 1. It was pan from left to right, and just make sure you get the ball in the frame, which I think was the biggest part. That I was struggling with first off, just especially when there's a spike because it goes so fast and you got to make sure you're not too tight. I really enjoyed it. It's almost like photography where there's always the risk of missing the opportunity to shoot something great. Like that's just broadcasting. If you're not paying attention all the time, you might miss something incredible, an incredible play or an incredible foul or whatever it might be, but you might miss it if you're not paying attention the whole time. And I think that's what a lot of young cam ops tend to do. They tend to lose focus because, oh, it's cam 1. I'm just panning and from left to right. This is easy, but it's pretty difficult, especially when you get up into that professional level. I remember watching a couple days ago some NBA camera operators, and their whole setup. They have the little crane thing where it's incredible how accurate they are when zooming in and zooming out.
Well, what I will say is that at the pro level, it is very impressive the exact degree of focus that they have. Because, like you said a minute ago, it's so easy to space out, even for just a second. And I see just on these network national broadcasts, just the attention to detail that really makes or breaks the broadcast. And that's, I think, something that we all strive to try and be in our kind of limited regional role that we're all in. But it's so impressive to see, and I don't think that those folks get as much credit as they honestly deserve at that level, because it's an insane amount of talent and hard work and preparation that goes into that.
Oh, of course, and that's kind of the root of why I wanted to do this podcast, because I felt that I've seen podcasts where they talk to broadcasters and even some writers, but never where you're talking to the cam ops, the audio engineers, the producers, directors, the people behind the scenes working on this every single day. And we've all been part of pretty taxing broadcasts. Everyone knows you're not there for a couple hours. Most higher end broadcasts, you're there for 10, maybe 12-hour shifts. And it's a lot of setup, a lot of tear down, and then you still got to do a game as well. So it's taxing at times, but that's why we want to shine a little light on those who kind of go unnoticed. But moving on now, favorite broadcast position. We've all done a little bit of everything, so I don't know. It was kind of tough for me, but Caden, what about you?
I mean, I love being the guy behind the mic and commentating a game, but if I'm not doing that, then honestly, I only got to do it once, but I had so much fun directing the one football game I was a part of. It was a blowout. There was, I think, 7 touchdowns in the first 10 minutes of the game. So it wasn't really a great game, but I had an enjoyable experience being able to call out all the shots. So if broadcasting doesn't count, I'll go with directing, Rodrigo.
Directing is really fun because you really get to tell the whole story. Well, you get the most power at least. You get to see what camera each one is shooting, but you also get to communicate with them and make sure that they're shooting what you want to see as well. So it's a position with a lot of power. Josh, what's your favorite?
So I can't just pick one because I've done so many, but I will agree with Caden in that high school football directing, which I get to lead the slate of games that we do with Clutch Sports Media every fall. Those are some of my favorite to do just because the atmosphere of the high school football scene is intense, it's raw, it's passionate, and then actually, like you just alluded to, putting the story together. And then everyone watching has really high stakes in these games. It's their children, it's their family members, and that's why they're rooting for that particular team, as well as just the town, right? The town that is playing, they have a stake in the game. So I enjoy kind of bringing that all together, running the storylines for that. I also will give a shout out to the under the basket handheld camera for basketball. Those are some of the most fun games that I have because it's just about in the middle of it as you could possibly get for a game.
Oh, of course. You're literally a few steps from the court. So, it's a fun position, but you sometimes get some people running into you. I know some of us have had run-ins with basketball players, especially at the collegiate level. It's really cool experience to have. But I really enjoy doing like replay stuff because it's such a stressful at times position because you don't want again, it's a lot like camera operation. You don't want to miss something. While you're always recording, it's such a fast position because you have to rewind and you get a little bit control on how fast or how slow a replay goes. A lot of communication goes into with the director to make sure that you're on the right channel, either A or B. But yeah, apart from like camera operation, I'd say replay is my favorite. Well, before we go, I want to hear your guys' most unique broadcast memory. Go ahead, Josh.
Well, unique broadcasts, unfortunately, you always jump to the bad ones first. And there have been lots of good moments, but that's kind of the point, is that good broadcasts aren't memorable because that's just everything going the way it should. But some of the most interesting experiences I worked a college football game down in Carbondale, Illinois, the Southern Illinois versus North Dakota State, I believe, a couple of Novembers ago. And that was a real feel of about 15 degrees outside. It was actively snowing during the game itself. I was up on the top of the 10-story press box. I was camera one. And that was the first camera work that I had done for a college broadcast on the roof before for football. So that was a challenge that I had to learn on top of trying to not get hypothermia and die, which is a little bit of an exaggeration. But I couldn't feel any of my fingers or toes during halftime and then for the rest of the game. So that was that definitely jumps to the top of the list, as well as the 4-hour drive to get down there through a snowstorm in the morning and then 4 hours back up in the evening. It was a really long day, probably topped out at 14 or 15 hours. Was it fun? No, because I was freezing the entire time. But was it educational? Absolutely.
Well, I'll give you two because I'll give you one as a commentator and one as a camera operator and a production member. My story as a broadcaster, it might be recency bias, but on Saturday I called a Illinois Wesleyan softball tournament. And game two was two Division III colleges, not with Wesleyan. It was the Lake Forest Foresters and the Wartburg College Knights. And they are not allowed to have replay review at Division III. So, call at the plate was out. coach comes in from the Knights, argues for obstruction. Well, since obstruction is a judgment call and there's no replay review, she has to put the game in protest for it to be called. So, or for the play to be challenged. So we sat on the broadcast as commentators, myself and my color commentator, for over 25 minutes, having to stall about when we didn't even know until minute 20 of that 25-minute break why the game was stopped. Because originally the coach just went over to the umpire, had a few words, then they went back to the dugout and each pulled out an NCAA rule book and are shuffling through the pages having this debate. Later on, they even brought down a computer with the NCAA rulebook, and the umpires walked away, made a phone call before going back for another 10 minutes of protest. So I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. Installing on the air for 25 minutes was not a fun task by any means, Rodrigo and Josh. And I don't know. I'm trying to think of the most memorable one because as Josh said, if you have a good day, you don't really think about that at the end of the day, and it's not really a hard one. Probably my most memorable just is my first show because of how excited I was, as Josh pointed out. And I remember even on the car ride home, one of the seniors drove me to and from who weren't even working, but he was up in the press box doing something else, and he told me that he goes, "Man, for a freshman camera operator, you did a really good job. We use your we use your camera for the replay review, and without how clear and good of a shot you got, they probably wouldn't have been able to overturn their call. So nice job." So I guess that's probably, because again, it's hard. If there's something that's bad that happened, you immediately think about it. But that's probably the best moment I've ever had, is that self-assurance in my very first game.
Well, that about wraps up the first episode of the Broadcast Podcast. Thanks so much for watching. Friday, we'll have our second episode, diving deep into the intricacies of camera operation, the camera operator, and its role in storytelling. You're not going to want to miss this. Join us Friday, and please subscribe, like, share. Thank you.